How many people were here when I did the series on Hers Whose Voice That Was Silenced? A few of you? Yeah. And so that was about the time of Mother's Day, and I really wanted to spend some time talking about the divine feminine at that time and how, historically, how that was, in a sense, taken away from us. And I just thought, well, we went into Father's Day. I wasn't here last week, so this time I wanted to talk about something that I'm calling the sacred call of the divine masculine. And one of the things I wanted to bring up about when we talked about the feminine was these different qualities that the divine feminine has given us. And we talked about things like intuition, receptivity, compassion, nurturance, creativity, flow, emotional wisdom, unity, connection, sensual presence. Did I miss any? No, I'm being serious. Did I miss any? Can anybody think of anything? Love? Thank you. See, I missed one, right? And so here's all these amazing qualities of the divine feminine. Oh, stillness, beingness. So I think if that's one thing when I think about the divine feminine, to me, it's the beingness versus the doingness. That, to me, is super, super powerful. And so when I think about the masculine, words come to mind like strong, provider, confident, tough, all those typical things when we understand the masculine aspect. And these qualities aren't bad. So in other words, we're not here to necessarily remove them. In fact, many are powerful when they're used with integrity, right? But without balance, they can become distorted. They can become toxic. They can become to the point to where it's not helpful. They can become harmful. Because think about it. Logic without heart becomes cruelty. And independence without connection can actually become isolation. And then all of a sudden we miss the juice. We miss the love. We miss the connection. We miss those things when we're so rigid with what it needs to be that we lose out. And when I think about the divine masculine, I think about adding things to what I already have. So in other words, I'm not taking anything away when you talk about this sacred call of the divine masculine. So for all the guys out there, you can take a deep breath. I'm not asking you to take away anything at all. All I'm asking you to think about is this idea of balance within your own being, and where is it within your own being that you could consider some of the feminine traits that we mentioned with the divine feminine, and maybe starting to add them or actually balance them with your divine masculine. And so this idea, this calling, is really, it's an invitation to the possibility of integrating or balancing both aspects. Again, we're not asking anybody to remove anything from any part of who and what they are. We're simply looking for a balance of the two. And so when I thought about the divine masculine, those qualities, presence, grounded, and steady, I think about integrity, living aligned, and living a spiritual truth. I think about protection, not from ego, but actually from love. And I think about clarity, wisdom to discern the truth. I think about purpose, being devoted to a higher calling instead of one driven by the ego. I think about support, when we actually lift others up and not holding them down. I think about accountability. In other words, you're owning your own impact that you have in the world. I think about courage to be vulnerable, courage to be real. And I think about honor and that reverence for self, but also for everybody else. And I think about all these different qualities, and I think to myself, man, if there was a way, is it possible to be able to balance these things out? One more, stillness, and that is in action. Again, you go from the divine masculine, which is normally do, and now you're starting to incorporate a little bit of the beingness in there as well. So ideally what happens is we create a balance of both the divine masculine and the divine feminine when we live our lives, and when we start looking and thinking about, okay, well, what does that actually look like? How do I actually apply that? In Ecclesiastes, it says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. So in other words, there's a time when it makes sense, when you've got to be strong and you've got to be bold and you've got to take action. But there's also a time to tamper that down a little bit and get out of your head and go back into your heart. And that's what I'm talking about. Don't ever, 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 ever forget your heart. No matter what you're doing, no matter what you're going, no matter who you're talking to, no matter what the conversation is, always, always, always include your heart. And so when I think about that, remember that there's a time to listen and a time to lead. There's a time to act and a time to hold. The spiritually awakened person knows how to feel into the moment and actually respond from truth, not from conditioning. In other words, in the moment, we go from going in our head and following the thing that we always do conditionally, and we pause for a moment, we come into the present moment, and we ask the moment, what is the moment requiring from us? And we don't do it from up here, we actually do it from in here. And so we started to listen, we slow down, we tap the brakes, and we start tapping into the heart, which is the thing that can guide us and can direct us and share with us what is honestly required in this moment. And maybe it's not what our brain thinks, but maybe it's something completely different that could serve everybody in that moment, not just you. Maybe. Just maybe, right? So a samurai once came to a Zen monk and asked the master, what is heaven and what is hell? And the monk looked at the warrior up and down and said, you're nothing but a brute. I doubt you could understand. Your sword is dirty. Your spirit is loud. And the samurai got mad. He was getting mad. His hand went to his sword. It's like he was moments from drawing it. And the monk softly said, that is hell. And the warrior froze, stunned. And in that instant, he understood. He understood that in his instinct to harm, that was hell. And he bowed to the monk. His eyes were full of tears. And then the monk said, that is heaven. So the divine masculine is not about suppressing emotion or becoming perfect. Not at all. It's about having the awareness to know where you're at in any given moment, and then acting from your heart, not from your ego, and choosing spirit instead. I have a story to share with you. So many of you know I went down to Costa Rica last week, and on the flight from Grand Rapids to Dallas, I sit down in my seat, and I'm sitting in the window, and for some reason, my row is not filling up, and I'm getting pretty excited about it. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is great. Because I'm not one of those people that like to get on a plane and just go, ba, 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 ba. So I get in my bag, and I pull out this book, and I'm reading the book called Jesus, My Autobiography. And I set it on the seat next to me for just a second as I was getting my pens and stuff out of my bag. And all of a sudden, I hear this person say, well, imagine that, me sitting next to somebody that's reading that book. And I look up, and of course, there's a priest. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I grabbed the book, and he said, well, I'm just really curious. Why are you reading the book? And I'm like, I think it's a pretty cool book. I love Jesus. He's pretty cool. And he asked me, well, are you a minister or something? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I am a minister. He goes, really? Tell me about that. So I tell him, I'm like, yeah, I'm an ordained Unity minister. Unity? Tell me about unity. And so I start telling him that, unity is about us believing that we all have an indwelling Christ and that we're not separate from God and that there's no separation, that we're loved, that we're not born in original sin, that there is no heaven and hell, and. So he gets the complete lowdown. And then he sits there and he looks at me and he goes, do you really believe that? Guess where my hand went? To the sword. My hand went to the sword, right? And he starts going, and so now here we go, we're doing this little thing, and so we start doing this little dance. It was like, well, I'm the authority, Mike, and the Catholic Church is the authority. And, the stuff that you're talking about is just, there's some conversations that but those things have been removed and stuff like that. And I listened, again, my hand's right here. It's on the sword. And, and then I'm going and then I start talking about what I've been talking about here lately. I'm like, yeah, but I'm just kind of curious, like, you guys took the book of Mary and Philip out of the Bible? Like, when are you going to put it back? And he's like, huh? Right? And so we're doing this little dance back and forth for a few minutes, right? And then all of a sudden, my hand's still there. It's on the sword. But then he starts to share with me his true devotion. And because I was kind of curious. I'm like, come on, man, this doesn't have to be like this. How can we change this? And I simply asked him, I'm like, how did you start? What was your journey? This guy was big. He was probably 6'4", big dude, looked like a football player. And he's like, well, I used to play college football, and then I got hurt. And then all of a sudden, I was hanging out, and I don't know, I just was spoken to by God. He said, so then I joined the ministry. And he said, so I was down in Indianapolis, and I lived in a homeless shelter on a concrete floor for 3 years, and I fed the homeless. And as he's sitting there talking, my heart is starting to open, because I saw in him the same passion and the same desire and the same love for God that I have. And even though it's a little bit different, it's still the same love and passion that I have. And he finally looked at me and he said, you know, Mike, ultimately what it comes down to me, he says, I'm just a disciple of Christ. And I looked at him and I said, yes, you are. Yes, you are. And at that point, I put my sword down. I took my hands off of my sword. And then we had this beautiful conversation for a half hour. And it was like two buddies just getting caught up that we haven't seen each other for a while. And it was beautiful. In fact, so much that when we're walking off the plane, he looked at me as we left and he said, do me a favor and please keep me in your prayers, and I'll keep you in mine. And I said, I will absolutely keep you in my prayers, and please keep me in yours as well. And we wished each other a fond adieu, and off we went. But it just goes to show you, when you really want to take your hands off the sword and get out of your head, what can happen between two people that you think have the potential to really go at each other, and you get to finally let it go. You know, Rumi once wrote, the masculine and the feminine are made of the same pearl, one being the sea, the other the wave. And in unity, we recognize the divine in all things. We teach wholeness here. That's what we teach. We affirm that we are all, every single one of us, unique expressions of God. How many times have you heard me say that? I say it over and over and over again, and no expression is greater than or less than the other expression. That we all have our own job to do. That God really did think to himself, oh my God, I would love to have this expression called Ray, or Barb, or Karen, or. And then all of a sudden, poof, here you are. You're born. And now you're this beautiful, amazing, incredible expression of the divine. God wanted to have the experience of you. That's why you're here, by the way. That's why you're here, is to have that expression. Without having to fix or change anything, you were created perfectly, just as you are. And, by the way, for all the guys out there that are thinking about this, we need you. We need your strength. We need your power. We need you to protect us. But we also need you to temper it, to add in the compassion, the grace, the forgiveness, the love. Those are the qualities that we're looking for. The combination of those two things. And when I think of those two things, I think about Gandhi, and I think about the Salt March. For those of you who don't know, in 1930, India was under the British rule. And what happened was, in one of the most oppressive laws that ever happened, they put a tax on salt. Something that belongs to the earth, that belongs to the planet. And yet the British said, no, we're going to tax it. Oh, and by the way, not only are we going to tax it, you can't make it. So something that was natural, something that was free, something that they could go get out of the earth, the British said, no, you can't do that. And we're going to tax it. And so rather than react with violence, what Gandhi did was he tapped into something deeper. And what he said was that we'll oppose this, not with swords or gun. Didn't put his hand on the sword, but with soul force. And so he announced that he would walk 240 miles to the Arabian Sea and make salt from seawater. And he started telling everybody about that. And as time went on, everybody started growing. And more people joined him, and more people joined him, and more people joined him in the walk. Before you know it, they had tens of thousands of people walking down to the sea. No violence. No violence. But do you think there was power there? You think there might be just a little bit of power? Yeah. It ignited a nationwide movement, and literally thousands and thousands joined him, walking mile after mile, 240 miles. Gandhi, thin and frail in body, but unshakable in spirit, became a living symbol of the divine masculine. What it's like to be soft, but powerful. He led with purpose, not with ego. He took a stand, but did not seek to conquer anything. He protected his people, but not through power over, but through power with. He disciplined his body, controlled his impulses, and he acted from higher principles, not base emotion, not through the ego. And when they reached the sea, he scooped up a handful of salty water, and he let it drain out of his hand. It was a quiet act, but the world heard it. The British arrested him, but the world saw the arrest of what it was, for what it was, a desperate move to stop a man who was truly free. He was free. No matter what the government thought that they could do for him, Gandhi was free. And he went on, obviously, to lead the nation. He wasn't tough in a way that society deems to be masculine. He was gentle. He was peaceful. But he was also one of the strongest men ever to walk the face of this planet. And just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful example of the divine masculine. And then I think about Jesus, of course, and the stories of Jesus. And you know the story of Peter, where they're in the garden, and the guard comes up to him, and Peter chops off the guard's ear, and Jesus goes, whoa, 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 let's not do that. So what's he do? He bends over and puts the ear back on. All right, you're good, right? So he had that side of him. Now, in the same breath, he could also turn over the tables in the temple. Remember the money changers and the changers in the temple? He could do that if he had to, but he had the ability to balance them both. And so just thinking about that, and I hope, if anything, what you take away from the message this morning is this idea that there can be balance. We need balance of both the divine masculine and the divine feminine in a healthy, creative, powerful way. And in my opinion, it's not going to be somebody who's over here and somebody's over there. I've said this before, that it's a coming together. That's the thing that's going to change this world that we're in. It's not going to be through war, it's going to be through love. It's not going to be through separation, it's going to be through unity. And it's going to take some really courageous people to choose that instead of the other. And my challenge to you is to look at your own life and think, where could there be a little bit more compassion that I could have, a little bit more love that I could have, a little bit more understanding, a little bit more grace? And my suggestion, my really, really super strong suggestion, is you start with the way that you look at yourself. We are by far harder on ourselves than anybody ever else could be. So start with yourself first, and then give yourself permission to let it go from there. And then once you start to do the work individually, then we start to do it collectively so we can actually do something, because in case you haven't noticed, we need some help, and it's time. So I just thought that was a cool graphic. I love it. So it really comes down to the balancing. It really comes down to, at least for me, and I think some other people in here, it's an understanding that we're in a space, we're in a time right now where we're being called forward to really step up our game. And so the invitation is to those who feel like, hey, I actually feel like I'm part of something. There's something that's changing on the planet right now. There's a lot of people that are showing up even here that are going like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm here. And it's awesome. And we're grateful for that. But we're grateful not because of me. We're grateful because Spirit's calling us together to actually do something bigger than ourselves individually, collectively, so we can change things. And then we get to go from there. So, having said that, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're grateful to have you here. You are doing amazing, amazing, amazing work. Keep sharing your light. Keep sharing your love. Keep showing up. You are the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful reflection of the divine that is perfect with what and who you are. Just keep doing that. Just trust yourself and trust that you're bigger than you think you are. My God, you're the reflection of the divine. Does it get any better than that? Really? It's amazing. Just get out of your head, go back into your heart, give yourself a hug, and then go out there and hug as many people as you possibly can. I think we'll make this world a little bit of a better place. God bless. Thank you. Namaste. Namaste.
Hey, it's Reverend Mike here. I just wanted to stop for a moment before you get on with your day and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. It means the world to us, and I just wanted to let you know if there's anything that we can do to make your experience even better, please do not hesitate to reach out by going to our website. I also wanted to offer you the opportunity for us to get together and sit down so I could get to know you a little bit better and answer any questions that you have. I can either do that by either getting together in person, have a cup of coffee, or we can meet online via Zoom. If you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach me at michael@courage2thrive.com. And lastly, if you find these messages are helping you, we would be tremendously grateful if you'd consider donating to the center. The best and the easiest way to do that is simple. Just go to our website. Again, thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope you're doing well. God bless, and we hope to see you soon. Bye-bye now.